Hello and welcome to the AGM, Snowsport England. We have pretty much all of the board here, and with me in Sport Park are Claire and Jade. So just before we start with the agenda, just do a few quick introductions. I'm Dominic McGonigal. I'm the chair of Snowsport England, and hand you over to Simon.
So I'm Simon Levine. I look after the finance portfolio for Snowsport England, been on the board for 5 years now. Ex-ski dad, or still ski dad, I suppose. If I can pass you over to Morwenna.
Hi everyone, good evening. Morwenna Angove. Similar to Simon, I have been on the board as non-exec director for 5 years now, so in my final year. Sorry, passing over to Gareth.
Good evening, everybody. Gareth Case, non-exec members director. I just concluded my first year on the board. I'm also an Alpine committee member. Previously, I was team manager for the dry slopes. I'm a level 4 official, and those that know me know that I've had a son that's raced through from dry slopes at the age of 5 to World Cup juniors at 21. Chris, you want to go next?
Morning, everyone. Chris Stroud, I'm the members director. I've been on the board for 6 years, so it's me that's standing down today. And I think that's all of us if we've covered everyone, have we? Greg?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Andy Howell, non-executive director for the board. Joined in December, so 6 months in. I'm also the safeguarding and welfare champion for the board. Lovely to see you all. Hope to meet some of you soon, and I'll pass on to Greg.
Hello everyone, Greg Sturge, non-exec director. Just starting my second term on the board, so I've been on for 3 years now. Background in sport development and events and technology, and doing a lot of work on the EDI agenda and our relationship with Sport England. And I think that's all of us, so I'll hand back to Dominic in the main room.
Thank you. And just quickly, Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire, Business and Operations Manager and also Company Secretary.
And Jade.
Hi everyone, I'm Jade, Participation Manager at Snowsport England. Started in October of last year, and I'm going to talk about what I do later in the call.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us for the AGM. I know you give up a lot of time to this sport, and giving up another hour in your evening is much appreciated. So onto the agenda. Item 1 is welcome and introduction. Approval of the minutes of last year's AGM, if anybody was paying attention. Can we have approval? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And matters arising, I think, are covered in the agenda, aren't they? Good. So we'll move on to the reports. We obviously have the annual report, which was published a couple of weeks ago, and then Simon will give us a report on the finances. But let's have a little look at the annual report, particularly as, of course, we developed our strategy, our 10-year strategy, and we've been working on that. So could we just have the 10-year strategy up? So it's an ambitious strategy, as you've seen. It's in sort of 3 strands: leadership, participation, and talent. So as the national governing body, we have a responsibility to all of you in the sport, to show leadership in terms of governance, fair competitions, safeguarding, and as we'll come on to on the finances as well. Then on the participation side, we work very closely with Sport England, and we will be working more closely with Sport England's systemic partners, because I think we're all aware that we love this sport, and there are a lot of other people who we think would enjoy getting into the sport. So there's a lot of latent demand out there, and we've been doing quite a lot of work, which we'll hear about a bit later. And then, of course, on the talent side, which is probably of most interest to this audience as members of Snowsport England. And again, we've got a lot of work going on with the talent pathway and the futures program. So I'm going to hand you over now to Gareth. Gareth Case is one of your two member directors, your eyes and ears as members on the board, and he's just going to pick up a few particular things on progress to date in this first year of the strategy. So over to you, Gareth.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. There's a number of issues that we're going to tap on probably between myself and Jade over the next 5 or 10 minutes. I was just going to land on 3, which part of that cycle, part of passionate to me actually, because those that went to Bormio, you would have known me speak about the safeguarding and the talent pathway. So I'm going to, if you bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk about safeguarding, talent pathway, and the leadership structure that we have in the business at the moment. From a safeguarding point of view, this all came to bear very, very quickly on the back of the White Report around gymnastics, football, cycling. In essence, those were pretty eye-opening reports, which scared the heck out of anybody that had any sort of interest in any sport whatsoever. We were in a pretty good place when we look back at it, and we look into what we actually had in place. But something of this nature, we can always be better. It's never completed. It's never put up on the shelf and forgotten about. It's very much constant work in progress. Mark Boyne joined us in early part of this year. He's actually a retired police officer. He's also a safeguarding lead for the LTA. So Mark balances his time between the LTA and now Snowsport England. Andy, who introduced himself earlier, so the 3 of us are responsible for delivering the safeguarding mission within Snowsport England. Andy's background is well, he didn't allude to it, but it's horse racing and golf. So we've got quite a wide spectrum of sport that we can put into the pot, or the melting pot of Snowsport England. In terms of the safeguarding action plan, it's approved and underway, and the work is progressing to getting all the audit documents together. As touched on earlier, there are a number of documents already in place, but this is a topping up and making sure they're robust and making sure they're absolutely right for the needs in the modern society. The plan for communication around the audit and anything to do with safeguarding will always be that it stands alone. It won't get absorbed with any other communication that comes out from Snowsport England. So anything safeguarding, welfare orientated, it will be a communication on its own. And we think that's the best way to communicate, so it doesn't get lost in the melee of an awful lot of information that can be thrown at you. Audit preparation, the audit self-assessment document has now been completed, so that's a good one to tick in the box. A number of guidance documents that accompany this have already been prepared and are being updated, and that will allow, when I move on later, you'll understand how the clubs and academies can use the templates that we prepare for their own benefits. They can brand them and then use them if they haven't got them already, because it gives us that commonality, it gives that consistency across the theme. One overarching safeguarding policy is the SnowSafe toolkit that will remain in place, and as it is on the Snowsport website, we've got no interest in changing that at the moment. The audit process remains. The clubs and academies have specific policies to follow. Now, a lot of them are already down that journey and doing pretty well, but there are there's some gaps we've identified, particularly policies around that you need to identify on websites, social media, photographic policies, very much practical policies that the clubs and academies should have as a basic expectation for their members and coaches. What we'll be doing to support them is actually, as I said, put these templates up. They can brand them. We've got consistency, and then we know exactly the standard that we're looking for. Clubs and academies know the standard that they're operating to as well. CPSU documents have all been reviewed in detail and in the process of being updated, so we're not very far from concluding that exercise. There's a lot of improvements in what we've done. Still a little bit further we can go just to make things a little bit cleaner, clearer and friendlier for the viewer. Case management group, we've adopted a principle or a process of Globacol, which is a data management system, which has been implemented and has been in place now for a number of months. This is a system effectively that allows you to record every case, no matter how small it may perceive to be or how large it may seem to be. You manage it, close it out. It stays on this sort of collection database. Everything's there, everything's logged, everything's recorded. It can be referenced. It's a central hub, to the point that GBS have approached us to see if they can use it as well. They're so impressed with it. It is also used by a lot of other sports, so that's a real godsend that we've come across. In terms of the CPSU, we had a mystery shopper put a call into us a couple of weeks ago, and we're pleased to see that they recorded a response time of within 2 hours. Now, last year, our average response time was 3 days. So that's a huge improvement in the way we're looking forward and the positivity around our safeguarding approach. We're going to be running an audit pilot, and Chatham have very kindly agreed to be the first club to undergo this pilot for us. We hope to get this out and up and running and in place throughout July. Feedback will then allow us to get the affiliation process posted off the back of the audit pilot, and it will also allow us to sort of set the expected standard for everybody else from an affiliation point of view. In terms of the identification of the affiliation, the requirements have already been communicated and they're up on the Snowsport England website. But what we intend to do is actually get a simple checklist out of expectations and what needs to be in place at point of affiliation. And those will be included on, well, one, they'll be included on the website, but they're also aligned to the audit test that we're going to go through with Chatham. Training, it was always part of our action plan of being training in-house. There's inconsistency when you've probably all experienced it when you come to DBS. There's various different versions flying around. Some we perceive as being acceptable, some we don't. So in order to get that consistency, what we've gone through a process where our training leaders now pass the content for safeguarding and protection of children in sport level 1. They've got that qualification. They're now making the process specific for Snowsport England, and on the back of that, we'll be able to run our own courses. The time to listen course is a generic welfare officer course, but this is also being taken under our own wing, so we'll be able to control that as well. So anybody that wants an update on those courses, or whether it be the first time or an update, can come, do it through Snowsport England. It's a consistent and recognised course. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have recognised that the Snowsport England website has been tweaked a little to reflect the fact that safeguarding is now no more than 2 clicks away. 2 clicks being 1 to get into the website, 2 to get into safeguarding. This is a sporting nice, well, not nice to have, a must have effectively. We want access. You don't want to be looking around for safeguarding or welfare. If you've got a concern, straight in, straight to it. And that's up and running already. So that's a very quick whistle-stop summary of where we are and the improvements and the actions that we've gone through probably in the last, mainly since probably Bormio, so probably January, February time this year, which I generally feel is a really, really good positive move. I jump now onto 2 of my 3 headings. Talent pathway. Tom couldn't join us tonight, unfortunately, but Tom Frandon has joined us as talent lead. His background is more pentathlon, bobsleigh, and skeleton. Some of you recall we had a bit of a curveball at the beginning of the year where there was an announcement of an alignment between GBS and Apex, which started trampling all over the pathway, which, if I'm blunt, I can say. So we had to tread a little water while that was all sort of settled down. And thankfully that's disappeared about as quickly as it arrived. So, it's all systems go now in terms of the talent pathway. We've had engagement with a number of academy and club leads, really good discussions. Whilst we facilitated them, it was really led by them themselves. And what is evident, and it was really quite good to hear, is that one of the real key things they're looking for is our support to offer education. And that's not not classroom education, that's education of coaches, education of leads around coaching principally was the main subject. And I know that sounds very bland and very easy, but a lot of athletes have turned coaches. There's some fundamental skill gaps there, if I can be blunt, which they recognise, and they've asked for our help to try and plug those gaps and make the coaching a big driver behind the talent. The talent pathway, we've got the first draft, which is being viewed internally at the moment. Before that goes the next stage, it will be we'll take further consultation with the clubs and academies, because frankly, whilst we have a good feeling, we have a good understanding, the clubs and academies know it inside out. They've been there, they've got the t-shirt, they understand it, and it's really important that we take their advice and guidance on it. The pathway means, in my head, I just had a pathway as Gareth putting his skis on as a 5-year-old, learning to ski all the way up to a World Cup skier. Well, actually, the pathway means a lot more to different people. People have different aspirations, and the pathway that we're trying to create is very divisional. You've got the dry slopes, you've got the ambassadors, you've got indoor snow, you have got the World Cup at the top end, you've got regional racing, you've got club national, you've got all these interdependencies, which mean different things to different people. So the process we're going through, and I say we're very, very close, is we've got the bones, we've got the framework. The next point is to put the skin on that, as I call it. So that's the support structure. So it's all very well having this pathway and it looks all very nice on a flow chart, but what is actually required to make these things real, make them happen, make them fundamental, make them achievable? So what's required and how can it be provided? And then ultimately, who's going to provide that? Is that Snowsport England? Is that parents? Is that clubs? Is that academies? What's the route through? Some of you will be aware that the Alpine squad, the England Alpine squad selection has already taken place. The criteria was published last year. Obviously, we've complied with the criteria, and those athletes that have met that criteria have all been notified. I think it was about a week, 10 days ago. In essence, I'm going to get my numbers wrong by a couple, so please forgive me. It was around about 55 athletes, roughly a fairly even split between male and female. I think that's it in a nutshell on talent. If we go into the leadership restructure, I think it's right and appropriate that it should be minuted that we owe a huge thanks to Tim. As a bit of an elephant in the room in terms of this topic, I'm not going to shy away from it. Tim was with us for 19 years, 19 years of solid service of Snowsport England, 12 of which he served as CEO. So thank you. I know he's not going to be here, but it's right and proper that we should thank him for the time and service and effort he's put into all the roles he had with Snowsport England. We are entering a transition period. We've got a great team of people, both directly employed at Loughborough, and we've also got a good caliber board that are really very, very keen to make a difference in terms of this NGB. Change can be unsettling, there's no doubt about that. But I would like, or we're certainly treating it as a positive, and I'd like you to treat it as a positive as well. It allows us to lay new foundations to build a new and different future, whatever that may look like, and that's part of the strategy that we're looking at. It is a bit of a cliche, but I am genuinely excited, and those that know me know I can get quite animated about the future. It does look good. It does look rosy. I used to be first to be critical of Snowsport England a few years ago. When I had my parents' hat on, I've probably turned poacher, turned gamekeeper, and I can see the good work that is happening. I'm very proud to be part of it. Those that are thinking, yes, you're a lunatic, Gareth, you're probably right, but at the same time, there's an awful lot of work that we recognise has still got to be done. This is very much sort of bottom rung of the ladder, and it's quite a steep ladder that we've got to climb. But you've got the right people in place. They're very committed to it. And I think it's a good place to be at the moment. If there's anybody out there that would like to join us, it's probably my offer. Please put your hand up and come and have a chat to us. It'd be great to hear from you. I suppose finally, and Chris will speak afterwards, but I would, Chris just announced that he is leaving. He leaves after 6 years. I'd like to thank him for his support over my 12 months in post. He's been with 30 years in Snowsport England. I I know he's not disapproving from the sport, he's just been disapproving from the board. So Chris, thank you very much for everything you've done. Much appreciated. That's my ramblings over. Hope that's all right for everybody. I'm sure there'll be some questions later. Back to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much, guys. So that's just highlighting a few of the things that have been achieved over the last few months. But it also highlights that there's quite a lot to do as well. So I'm going to hand over to Jade, who's going to pick out some of the sort of key next steps in leadership, participation, and talent.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. As Gareth just alluded to, the future is looking really bright. There's an awful lot of things in place for the next steps and lots of plans for myself, Claire, and the rest of the team. So things are really exciting, and I'm just going to pick out a couple of them. So there's quite a bit on the screen now. I'm not going to talk to all of it, and this isn't a comprehensive list either, but just to pick out a few of the really exciting things that are kind of coming up for us. The first one I want to pick out in terms of in the participation section in coaching, we do have our coaching conference coming up. That's out for booking, so if you are a coach and you're listening, please do get booked onto that. But the bit that's really exciting in this coaching space is that Ryan's working on our new learner management system. This will be launched in the next few months, and we hope to have the first course on there by the end of the year, and hopefully the first 2 courses. It's a very new way of working for us, but this is about bringing our courses online. This won't just cover participation, it will cover a whole ream of different courses, so not just coaching, but there'll be loads of opportunity to develop officials, volunteers, staff, board as well through this. And it'll be a long-term project, but a really exciting and innovative future in terms of coaching for us. So that's the first one I want to touch on. The second one that we've done a lot of work on is in the places part in participation. So our places section is all about the places where the sport happens, our clubs, our facilities, and our schools as well. In terms of clubs, we've put a lot of resource behind this year. For those of you in a club, hopefully you've heard from Steph, who's our new participation officer. She's been working really hard on this piece of work. We've introduced something called SE Club Connect, which you'll have seen on the previous slide. And this is just about connecting Snowsport England and our clubs closer together and being able to really provide a support system there. We did quite an intensive club survey earlier on this year, and Steph's done a lot of work on working through that and some of the survey recommendations. And we're going to start to implement some of those recommendations soon. We're just working through that. One of the first things we've made in terms of change off the back of that is in the next affiliation window. So alongside some safeguarding changes, you'll also see that we're going to split out clubs, academies, and kind of our groups. So we have some charities in that club section as well. And that means that we can just talk to the different audiences in the right way and in a way that works for them. So hopefully that will provide a little bit more direct and appropriate and kind of real content that's needed from those different audiences and allow us to be able to communicate in different ways. We're also looking at a new club finder as well, so early doors on that one, but quite exciting. So we're working quite hard in the club space. We started to get a lot more clubs turn up to our club session. We had one on Tuesday of last week. We've now also got a disability specific session as well, so lots happening in that space. It's quite exciting, and this is just the start of that. So again, do feed into myself and Steph any feedback on that, and we'll continue to develop that over the next few years. I guess the third one to pick out is equality, diversity and inclusion. Now this sits across all 3 of these strands in different ways, and actually you could argue sits across almost every single section of the strategy. It's a really key and pivotal way in which we want to change moving forward. So within the leadership side, we have developed a equality, diversity and inclusion working group, which is a mixture of staff and board, but internal changes, and that will be working on some staff training and our new diversity and inclusion action plan, which we will have published by February of next year. And we've been working with a consultant on some of the content of that as well. And also starting to make some changes towards how we work. So we've already introduced some changes to Sport 80 and the data that we collect, and we'll be looking to increase that over next year as well. Specifically in terms of participation though, we've shone the light on a lot of different news stories. You'll have seen lots of our communications in terms of the imagery that we're using and stories that we're sharing and some of the staff training. But we'll also be developing something to sit in that new learner management system as well. And we've also just launched the Community Innovation Fund, which was really successful last year. And we had 3 successful projects that we funded last year, and we've increased that for this year as well. So that's open at the moment as well. So anyone listening that wants to do something in the space of inclusion, there's an opportunity to apply for that fund. All the information's on the website. Again, contact myself or Steph if you've got any questions on that. But some really exciting stuff happening, lots of change happening, a lot of work is happening in the background as well, and sort of things that you might not see yet and that will be coming out in the next year to 12 months. But yeah, really, really exciting. I can't emphasize more what Gareth said around it's a really positive future, and we're taking some really good steps to rebuild some fundamentals to grow and step up on. Back to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much, Jade, and thanks to Gareth and Chris. So that was just really a snapshot, picking out some of the highlights. Obviously, there's more information in the annual report, and we'll be carrying on the conversations as we work through the strategy over the next year or so. So now we come to the numbers, and just before I hand over to Simon, I just wanted to say that this is Simon's last AGM as finance director. We're not losing him straight away, but by this time next year, we have to find a replacement for Simon, which is going to be a challenge. And also just to say that we have been very lucky to have Simon. He's one of those proactive money people who looks at the revenue as well as the costs. So Simon, over to you. We need you to unmute, Simon. We want to hear you, we want to see you.
There you go. So one of the formal parts of the AGM is always reviewing the financial statements and going through a summary of kind of how they've performed and look into the future. So what I'd like to do is just take you through what we've achieved in 2022 and then look a few years ahead. And one of the things you might remember over the last 5 years that I've been involved as finance director is we've always had a financial forecast that looks forward 2, 3, 4 years, so we can extrapolate where we sit financially and look to the future of the organisation to make sure we've got sufficient funds, or if there are deficits, we can address those. And we've managed to do that quite successfully over the last few years. So if we could just switch over to the next slide, please. So oops, if you can go back one. That's the one. So if you can think back to where we were when we talked about budgets last year, we projected a deficit for 2022 of about £13,000. At the end of the year, with all the activities that happened through the year, we actually came out with a fairly good surplus of £11,000. Now, during 2022, we pretty much changed the majority of the central staff team. In fact, I mean, there's only 2 people left from the original team still in position, fantastic people, but we've got a very new team. But one of the reasons for the change from deficit to surplus, in fact, one of the major areas there is actually the delays that it took from budgeting for people's salaries through to actually getting the new people on board actually kind of saved us some funding. So the major part of the difference there is the delays, if you like, in getting the new team on board as the old team left. Looking at other things that happened from a major perspective in 2022, we've had questions actually preceding the AGM about talent funding. So in 2022, we got for 6 months, we got a £50,000 talent fund agreed. And that was while we put in our full talent fund proposal. And we've got agreement for £100,000 a year for a 2-year cycle for talent funding that takes us up to the next Olympic cycle, where they're trying to synchronize the talent funding through to the Olympic cycle. So great success there. And another major contributor to our financial results each year is the English Alpine Championships. We came out of COVID. We were not too sure how successful or large the English Alpine Championships would be. They were very successful in 2022, just as successful in 2023, which is fantastic news. And that really starts our year off very well. In 2022, we had downscaled the team and being very cautious. You'll find Prudence is my middle name. We were joking. Gareth started calling me Prudence now, unfortunately. But we've been very prudent around the investment we made in the English Alpine Championships in terms of the size of the team that was sent out, trying to reduce costs. as it was, the results and the participation were as big as they were before COVID, which was really gratifying. So some major influences for what moved us from a projected deficit to a financial surplus for the year. If we could just switch on to the next slide, please. Now, if we look at our major areas of income and expenditure, you can kind of see by the size of the pie graphs where that money comes from. From an income perspective, the majority of our income, or the larger proportion of our income, comes from events like the English Alpine Championships, income we get from club nationals, other training courses and other events we run through our volunteer workforce. We also have a substantial amount of grant income that comes both from Sport England, the Talent Fund, and other smaller contributions from grants. We obviously have members and we get membership income as well as club affiliation income, but you start to see the proportions there. I'll particularly point out sponsorship. So if you go back 6 years, 7 years, sponsorship was a large proportion of our income. That really died over the COVID period as kind of costs increase, companies were not as willing to invest in sponsorship. And this is an area we do see coming back, not in the immediate term, but if we can get the proposition right, coming back in the longer term. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later as we talk about commercial sources of income going forward. If we look at our cost side of things, we obviously have costs of running events like the English Alpine Championships and others. A large proportion of our costs obviously is our central staff team. So, all of us that sit on the board of directors, with the exception of the CEO, are all volunteers, just like you are in your roles, whether it's as official, as committee members, as club leaders, whatever. We have a substantial amount of administrative costs, whether it's computer systems, online systems. We spend a fair amount on insurance, which covers all of our members. And then obviously we have accounting, legal and professional costs. I've particularly picked out the Para Snowsport contribution in 2022. You might remember I mentioned earlier that we got an initial £50,000 grant from Sport England for talent. Half of that grant was allocated to Para Snowsport, which was an initiative was run in collaboration with Snowsport Scotland. So that's a fairly substantial part. I just wanted to separate out that. So that gives you kind of an idea of the major areas of income and expenditure going forwards. And I'm going to come back to this a number of times, but the grant income, we agreed our 5-year grant just over a year ago. That rolls forward to 2026. That gives us a slight problem because that grant was agreed before inflation started rocketing. So you can imagine in that pie graph of income, you've got one of your major sources of income, which is set for the next, well, till 2026, where your other costs are increasing. And if I put that into numbers, if you can just go on to the next slide, you can see what the impacts are. So on the left hand here, you can see our Sport England grant. Now it does diminish slightly over the years of the grant. They're actually, if you look at the scale, it's not a major change. It's like from 225,000 down, reducing down to about 203,000, I think it is, by the time we get to 2026, 27. But that is fixed, whereas our costs are going up by, well, at the moment, 10% over the last year, and inflation is probably going to come down, but it's not coming down as rapidly as people want. I've mentioned already we've got our additional talent funding of 100,000 that's been agreed for 2 years till we hit the Olympic cycle, and then we'll be applying for talent funding, hopefully at that level or more going forward. But that inflationary impact on our costs when a major stream of our revenue is fixed will have an impact. And in my very prudent charged accountancy type projections, which is kind of, we've done quite a complex forecasting model where we can put in various parameters of growth, costs and things like that. We're looking at some increase in deficits over the coming years, not insurmountable, but they are there, and they're all based on the 2022 budget. So I can immediately look at those and say, well, the English Alpine Championships is actually doing a lot better than budgeted typically. So that takes out a large swathe of it. But we are going to look at alternative sources of income going forward, one of which might be greater commercial income around sponsorship and other activities. Now, if you just go forward to the next slide, please. So to address those financial forecasts, look at alternative revenue opportunities. If you think about, for example, the sponsorship offering that we have, it is a lot cleaner and a lot clearer to sponsors if you have a grassroots to elite sponsorship model. So you're not just kind of dividing, as we do within, if you imagine our governing bodies, we've got Snowsport England, Snowsport Scotland, Snowsport Wales, GBS. It's a very complex governing body structure for a small sport in the UK and in England. And the more we can take away that complexity, so the better from a sponsor's perspective. So we are talking to GBS about how we work more together to offer a better proposition to potential sponsors. We're obviously implementing the Inspiring Snowsport strategy. That will hopefully reap rewards in terms of greater participation. We're already seeing some of the impact of that going forward. And as we have done over the last few years, we did incredibly well during the COVID period, we are continuing to manage our cost base very, very tightly. So an example of that is we gave up our office space in Loughborough a while back, and at the moment we're looking to continue on a kind of virtual office basis going forward for the foreseeable future, because that reduces our costs quite considerably and that helps address that deficit. Okay, if we could just go through to the next slide. Now, as Dominic mentioned, the way all of us as non-executive director volunteers work at Snowsport England, we offer ourselves forward for 3-year terms, and you can run, according to our articles, for a maximum of 2 3-year terms. So Chris has been working on the board for 6 years now, that's 2 3-year terms, and now he has to step back and new people will take his place. And that rotation, I think, is healthy for the organisation. Morwenna and I both joined at the same time. We'll both be coming to the end of our 3-year terms at the beginning of June next year. So for me, this will probably be my last AGM presenting as finance director, and we'll be looking probably over the next few months to get a new finance director in place, ready for the 2023 budget cycle, so they can then own that budget, run in parallel with me for a few months while we hand over everything, because there's quite a lot involved in the finance side of things. So I would put it out there, if any of you are interested in stepping up to take on any of the volunteer roles on the board, but especially the finance director one, please do just get in touch. And personally, I've really enjoyed my time working on the board at Snowsport England. I'll carry on doing that for the next year, and I'm sure to be involved after that period. It's been very rewarding, quite hard work. If I look at my time, we've had to go through making sure we got funding from Sport England going forward. Then COVID hit, trying to survive through COVID when we were at one point looking at an £80,000 deficit that I think we reduced down to a £4,000 deficit through tight cross controls. And now with the new strategy, there's been a lot going on. It's been really interesting. So I would recommend stepping up. Don't complain in the background if you're not willing to step up and take part. So if I can just ask you to go to the next slide, please. There are a couple of formal things we have to do as part of the AGM. One is accept the audited financial statements. So we do have an audit on our financial statements every year. So first of all, I can just ask if someone could propose and second that resolution, please.
Do you propose?
I will propose.
And a voice to second.
I'll second.
Fantastic. So that's one done. And then the other thing is reappointing the auditors for the following year. Now, just a point I've made at the bottom there, on our rotational basis, we would normally this year be looking at the auditors, maybe to stay with the current auditors or maybe to switch. Discussing it with the board, I felt that with the new finance director coming in, they should own that process and be involved in the recruitment of next year's or the future year's auditors. So we agreed that we'd stick with the current auditors for one more year, and then the new finance director can then look at that and decide which auditors they want to work with going forward. So the second resolution from a finance perspective is reappointing Harris and Simon as our auditors for the 2023 financial year. So again, if I can ask for someone to propose that.
I'm happy to propose that.
And someone second it, please.
I can second.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's the formal part of the finance bit done, generally known as the boring bit. I hope that was interesting and useful to people a little bit. I'm very happy to take any questions later.
Thank you very much, Simon. And you can see we've had a lot of value from Simon on the board over the last almost 6 years. So we now move on to the nomination for a second term of our independent director, one of our independent directors, Greg Sturge. You heard from him earlier. He's done tremendous work as the lead on equality, diversity, and inclusion, and a number of other areas. So the board has approved his second term, and we're just formally noting that here at the AGM. So thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you. Looking forward to 3 more years.
Now we come to the election of a member director. We have 3 nominations, and you've seen the 3 nominations, and indeed a number of people have already had a chance to vote by proxy. And now here is your opportunity to vote at this meeting. So can I hand over to Claire, who is our official election officer, to handle the election?
So I'm going to launch a poll on Zoom shortly. I know a couple of you have already done a proxy vote, so please don't vote again, but I'll launch that now for you. Just keep it open for another 30 seconds.
Is this where you go for an ad break, Dominic? Or put some music in the background?
You're ready.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to close that now, so we'll be back with you in a couple of minutes.
And as right on cue, thank you, Gareth. There's a short ad break. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Chris. Chris, as you've heard, has been with us on the board for 6 years. But perhaps what many people don't know is that he's actually been in the sport for about 35 years and given huge service to Snowsport England through that time. He's an unbelievably modest person. So if you actually look at the website, there are about two lines about him, which hides an enormous amount of work he's done for the sport, mainly on the coaching side. He loves coaching. He's a level 4 coach and tutor. And he's also been instrumental in the coaching training, and which is a hugely important part of what we do at Snowsport England. And then his day job is in a similar line as a teacher of physical education. And I know he's done that with as much passion as he's given to his various roles with us at Snowsport England. So thank you very much, Chris. It's definitely not goodbye, but thank you for your service on the board and more generally to Snowsport England. So I'll now hand you back to Claire for the results of the member director election.
So we have received a good number of votes, and John Greenwood will be elected as Members Director.
Okay. So thank you very much for all the votes. Thank you for the 3 nominations. And John, will look forward to welcoming you to the board meetings going forward. So we now move on to the special resolution. This is really just a little bit of tidying up of the Articles of Association. The new draft has been published, but I'd just like to ask Andy if you wouldn't mind just saying a few words, just for any members that have perhaps not had a chance to have a look at them.
Of course, evening again, everyone. So I'm here to very briefly talk about the Articles of Association and to ultimately seek member approval of updates to the articles through special resolution. These articles have been reviewed by Claire and non-exec director Emma Wright. Emma isn't here this evening, hence why I'm speaking. However, just to put on record, sincere thanks to Emma and Claire for their work on updating these and producing this proposal. Some points to note. So the changes proposed to the articles are part of a periodic review, which is in turn part of good governance to ensure that they are current and that they are relevant. So by my reading, the proposed version is intended to replace articles last adopted in 2017. The updated Articles of Association have been available to the members on the Snowsport England website for review and comment. That includes a tracked version of the proposed updates with some pretty detailed notes so that you can see what changes are being made and understand the rationale as to why those changes are being proposed. Now, I understand a link to the location on the website was sent out on the 22nd of May. And just to flag some key changes, the changes are to reflect and empower Snowsport England to do exactly what we already are doing in practice since these were last updated in 2017. So to name a few, we're collaborating to fulfill Sport England's Uniting the Movement strategy. The updates reflect the organisation's duties regarding safeguarding, welfare and general regulation. The changes reflect the organisation's work regarding its commercial strategy, for example, as mentioned by Simon earlier, the alternative revenue streams. And also the changes state our commitment, as already mentioned, to our strategy around equality, diversity and inclusion. And just to note that the articles themselves have been changed to be gender neutral throughout. And so on the basis of that summary and the more extensive comments in the articles themselves in the tracked version on the website, the board proposes the approval of the special resolution to change the Articles of Association. And I believe I'll hand back to Claire to run a similar poll, if that's correct.
Thank you. Yeah, so Claire, if you'd like to take over again as our election officer.
Of course, I'll launch the poll now for you. Just give you another few seconds.
While you're doing that, it's worth mentioning if anybody's got any questions on the way through, we can use the chat system and then we'll be taking questions at the end.
Thanks, everybody. So just to confirm, they've been approved.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking part in that good part of governance. So now we move on to the Chair's Award, and this year we actually have 2 chairs award. The first is young Jasmine Taylor, who incredibly holds the record for the British skier with the most World Cup and World Championship medals. And the reason that we don't hear so much from her, because of course telemark is not an Olympic sport, so it doesn't get the kind of airtime that slalom and the others get. But an incredible achievement. She's currently sort of number 3 in the world in sprint and number 5 in the world in parallel sprint. She's had a fantastic season this winter, 2023. 2nd in the parallel sprint, 3rd in the classic events. And I think one of the things that really marks Jazz out is that she hasn't forgotten her roots. She started skiing in Suffolk Ski Centre on the dry slope, and was a loyal member of that club for many years, and still goes back and volunteers as a coach when she's not in the mountains. And in fact, I saw her 2 weeks ago helping out at a slalom race with the telemark skis, and actually forerunning the slalom course in telemark skis, which was quite impressive. So thank you very much, Jazz, for all you do for the sport, and a very worthy recipient of the Chairs Award, which we will give you in person when we have a suitable occasion. And then
thank you so much. I am listening, and yeah, it means a lot. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Jazz. And then the second Chairs Award goes to Richard Barber, who I can say perhaps is a bit more seasoned. Richard has given many years to the sport, particularly on the coaching side, but also running facilities and being involved in all sorts of areas of the sport. He used to run the centre at Gloucester. He's a senior tutor in our coaching scheme, and he's had a big hand in actually creating many of our coaching resources, which are kind of sort of the backbone really of what we do. If you get good coaches, then we get good athletes. He was head coach for Gloucester Disabled Ski Club since 1998, and won Coach of the Year, Adapted Coach of the Year, as part of that role. Former chair of the British Ski Slope Operators Association, and former chair of the Coaching Technical Panel. So he's given a huge amount to the sport. And Richard, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us, and you are a very ready recipient of the Chairs Award. And again, we'll look for an opportunity, perhaps at Hemel, for me to give you the award in person. So Richard, are you with us? Maybe not. No. No. Okay. Well, I will give Richard the award in person, and then we'll.
Sorry, I am here.
Oh.
I was just struggling to unmute.
Ah, Richard, excellent. I'm delighted. Thanks very much for all you do.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to coaching, continuing to play a central part in Snowsport England in future years.
Thank you. So next up, we move to questions and any other business. So as Simon was saying, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat, and we'll get through as many as we can. Now, we do have some questions in advance, so I'll take those first to give you a chance to sort of think of other ones. We have 11 questions in advance, but don't panic, we're not going to go through them all. One of them is from Helen Bell, and then the other 10 are from Stephen. So Stephen Metheringham, if you don't mind, we won't go through all 10 tonight. What we'll do is we'll put them up on the chat so that you can all see the questions, and we'll respond in detail to all of them. And if anyone wants the answers to those, then please just let us know. We're very happy to share those. And perhaps we'll pick out, I think 2 of the questions are of very general interest, so I think we'll pick those out. But first, Helen, I don't know if you're on the call, but you were asking a question about the trans policy and how it affects female athletes in the sport, particularly at grassroots level. Helen, are you on the call?
Oh, we can't hear you, Helen.
We can hear something, but not very much.
Yes, I'm here now.
That's great.
Yes.
Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, it was. I just want some reassurance, please. Can the board ensure that the new trans inclusion policy will give clear guidance to volunteer race organisers so that events can be inclusive yet fair to female competitors at all levels of the sport, including grassroots?
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. And I'm going to ask Greg Sturge to respond to that. Greg is our lead on the board for equality, diversity and inclusion. So Greg, can you respond to that?
Of course. Thank you, Dominic, and thank you, Helen, for the question. As I'm sure you're aware, we published version 1 of our trans inclusion policy back in 2022, very much developed in line with Snowsport Scotland and Snowsport Wales, and we're sort of all singing off the same hymn sheet on there. Obviously, is an incredibly complex topic, and we are continually reviewing and developing that policy. And I think you can expect to see some small amendments to language coming up. We were expecting an updated FIS policy last month. That hasn't come out yet, so we're continuing to engage with them to ensure that we get updated language and that we align to the international body as soon as that is possible. We do have a longer term action plan to develop a policy, and as you say, sort of how we implement that, but it does take time and it is very complex, and we need to make sure that it works across all elements and disciplines of the sport. So we are working on it, but it does take time to develop. As a general trend, we obviously there's a bit of a balance here of fairness versus inclusion, and as a general rule, it is very much leaned towards the inclusion side in grassroots, moving through to fairness within the sort of meaningful competition pathways. So for now, apologies, my 2-year-old's running around in the background. At the moment, the advice is very much read the policy. If you have any questions or any uncertainty as to how that's implemented, then please do reach out to Jade. Jade leads the EDI work from the staff perspective, and she will be able to answer as best she can in terms of what that looks like and how it's implemented at this stage. So that's where we are at the moment, continuously evolving, and appreciate your patience and your willingness to engage in the subject. Obviously, it is a one that we're very keen to get it right ultimately, and that's what we're trying to achieve with this.
Stephen, as we mentioned, has put 10 questions down, which we're putting in the chat so everybody can see them. As I say, we will. I don't think anyone would thank me for doing all of them live, but we'll respond to them all and share the answers with anybody who is interested. A lot of them are very procedural, if I could say. So it's probably better to do a written response. There are 2 that I think are of general interest. One was about the talent funding, which has actually already been answered by Simon. That was the 100K that he mentioned, split between para and other talent. And then the other one, which is I think of general interest, is the consultation for the strategy, which is a very important point, because it's very important that obviously this strategy is for the whole of the sector. Is all of our strategy, not just top down. So again, Greg, you were very involved in the formulation of the strategy, and I wonder if you could just take us through the consultation that there was during the conception of the strategy.
Of course. So for everyone's clarity, I'm answering Stephen's first question that's been posted in the chat. So around the strategy and our requirements around Sport England and our Tier 3 compliance in a governance sense, which requires us to engage with our stakeholders in the preparation and announcement of our 10-year strategy. Firstly, I think the most important thing to say is that we as a board were very aware of this, and I actually previously worked in Sport England in the core market team, and my role was to support the implementation and management of the Tier 3 governance strategy. So I'm very well aware of its requirements, and we have been able to make sure that is embedded throughout. We ensured there were plenty of opportunities to engage with the stakeholders and the membership whilst we developed that strategy. That included sessions in Bormio through the committees that are obviously appointed to represent the sport, and at AGMs and a few strategic focus sessions over the last couple of years. So from our side, we feel like there were plenty of opportunities for the membership to engage in that process and to be aware of what we were working on and to feed in on what we ended up presenting. In terms of meeting Sport England's requirements, we are in very regular communication with them. They are very up to date throughout the creation of the strategy and its launch, as well as the recent leadership changes. So we are as our key funder and our key partner. They are top of the list in terms of when something changes or gets announced, to make sure they're aware of that. So from their side, they have not flagged any concern. They've been very happy what we've presented so far. Jade submitted our year 1 report just last week, 2 weeks ago, and we'll be sitting down, myself and Jade, with our Sport England partner manager, Emma Forward, in 2 weeks' time to discuss this further. So as far as they're concerned, from their side, we've been very clear, very transparent, and given plenty of opportunities. So really appreciate the question. It's a really important one. We wanted to ensure that the membership were engaged throughout, and hopefully that sheds some light on for everyone on this call as to what we did to ensure that.
Thanks very much, Greg. And then we've got a question from Debbie about the talent pathway. There's a lot of talk about Alpine. Does it cover the other disciplines as well, Nordic and freestyle? And the simple answer is absolutely yes. We had the Futures program last year, which will continue this year. I went up to the Freestyle Champs a couple of weeks ago, which is our first such event post-COVID. So absolutely, that's on our radar, and the talent pathway will be a sort of template across the disciplines. And so it's very noticeable that actually we do have quite a few athletes who move across from one discipline to another, during the course of their pathway. So absolutely. And then what was the next one?
So Dominic, can I just question a sec? Just doing a slight clarification on the talent funding. So when we got the £50,000 interim funding last year, half of that went on para. The 100,000, the rest of it went on the talent lead, and about 11,000 for program funding. The 100,000, almost all of that goes on frontline coaches. So what we want to do is use that funding to get coaches on the ground working with athletes. So whether it's the Futures program, ski and border cross, freestyle Nordic, all the rest, that's where that 100,000, the vast majority, goes into frontline coaching. So
thank you, Simon. Yeah, that's helpful. Then we've got a question from Matt. What are the proposals to increase engagement with the Snowsport England selected athletes? Gareth, these are the ones you mentioned, so maybe you could just say a little bit about what our plans are here.
Sorry, I missed that. I've just cut
Yeah.
in just on the critical moment. Could you just say that again, please?
Yes, it's what are the proposals to increase engagement with the Snowsport England selected athletes?
Right. At the moment, we've got a void. So we've got a criteria for Snowsport athletes or the Snowsport England athletes. But as you know, for years and years, I'll be honest, it's a bit of a hollow entity. And that's where we come to the skin bit of my analogy earlier. We've got the bones, which is this is the criteria, this is the selection process, this is the squad. Now what do we do with the squad? We've got to make it meaningful. There's no point having all these little iterations around the place if it doesn't add meaning, and that is, to the athlete. What does it actually mean? Yes, there's lots of byproducts, and an athlete attaining that membership of a squad like that, CVs, school exceptions when they want to go off on races and things. There's lots of positives, but we've got to make it meaningful. You've got a GBS route, which obviously very meaningful and perhaps, let's be honest, a slightly higher level. But we've got to make every level that we look at meaningful for that individual, because that is where their world is focused upon, whether that be dry slopes, ambassadors, Snowsport England squad, whatever it is. So I don't have a finite answer for you at the moment, but it is work in progress, and it's about putting that skin on the bone. So if you could just bear with me, and I'll get something out as soon as we possibly can.
Thanks very much, Gareth, and just to reiterate that we're in an ongoing dialogue with the coaches on exactly that question. So so thank you for that question. I can't see any other questions. Obviously, we have got the outstanding ones from Stephen. So if you want to receive the answers to Stephen's questions, please pop that in the chat. Just say you'd like to hear the answers to all of them or some of them. And finally, I just want to do a few thanks. We've already thanked, obviously, Chris Stroud, coming to the end of his term. We also have two other directors who are at the end of their term. Emma Wright has stepped down, and so we say goodbye and thank you for Emma. Emma's done a huge amount of work, particularly on the articles, and one or two other things. And I want to echo the thanks to Tim, who obviously steps down as a director, as well as CEO. As Gareth was saying, he's given 19 years service to the organisation, and I do want to thank him for that. And finally, thanks to you, because I know that you are, I think, all volunteers like us, giving so much time to the sport. And as volunteers, we don't often get thanked. We don't often even get noticed. But I do want to thank you for everything you do, whether it's coaching or on a committee or running a club or wherever, because what you do really makes this sport happen and gives a sort of a great experience for all of our athletes and everybody in the sport. So thank you very much, and good night, and we will of course continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic.
Goodbye, everybody.
Just leave the call open for a couple more minutes, just in case you want to receive the answers to the questions. Okay, right, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Dominic. Thanks, Claire.